And the deck has a combo-esque finish with some of the cards that it plays. Yeah, I just sold a bunch of booster packs in the auction house. I had a bunch built up. Opponents playing. So one of the neat things about this game is you can get a feel for what deck your opponent might be playing based on the champion that they have. So my opponent's playing Cressida, which has a champion ability that gives him an extra charge or resource. It gives him extra resource on occasion. So this is generally a ramp champion, which means the sweet thing about playing against ramp with this deck is the ramp decks are usually pretty light on interaction. So our combo finish is pretty potent against him. So how the combo works in this deck is we have cards like Jags, which has an ability called Inspire, where when we play a troop that costs equal to or more than him, that troop gets an extra line of text. And that extra line of text in this case is the troop starts dealing double damage. And then we have, so this card makes our things deal double damage, and then Azure Fate Sorceress makes it so whenever your troops come into play, they deal damage equal to their power to your opponent. So basically, you get to double them with Jags, and then you play your bigger troops out with Azure Fate Sorceress and just deal a bunch of damage to their dome. So our opponent's card is a 1/2 that gives him a charge at the beginning of, or a resource at the beginning of every one of his turns. So I'm gonna go ahead and time ripple this back to his hand, so that way he can't play a fatty. So this is this bounces a permanent to its owner's hand, and it makes that card cost 1 more. So if our opponent wants to replay his card that we just bounced to his hand, it's gonna cost him 3 resources now instead of just 2. This is a really interesting build he has. At the start of your turn, you get 1 for each elf you control. Counter Magic's pretty good. So Counter Magic interrupts target card and then makes all other cards with the same name cost 2 more. I think I want to deploy Jags here, though. He can only play... He could play like a 6-drop next turn, I suppose, but I think I want to get Jags into play so that way we can... this Azure Fate Sorceress is quick, which means we can play it at any time. So that means next turn we can play out this shard and hold up Counter Magic, or play Azure Fate Sorceress if he doesn't play something we need to Counter Magic. So shards give you 3 different things. Shards give you what's called a threshold towards playing one of your cards. This gives me a red threshold. It also gives me a resource, and resources are permanent. They replenish the start of every turn. And then they also give you a charge towards your champion's ability. So for 6 charges, my champion can put a troop into play with power and toughness equal to the number of shards that are in the top 10 cards of my deck. Our opponent's champion, for the cost of 3 charges, can give him 1 temporary resource. So we just drew a Crackling Bolt here, which does 3 damage or something. So I think I want to kill this, or do I want to hold up Counter Magic is what we have to decide this turn. So if I kill this... If I don't kill this, he gets 1/2 shards from his 2 resources from his 2 elves, and then he gets a 3rd from this, and then he has a 4th from his champion power, so he could have up to 9 charges next turn. Yeah, random cards in the game say they do this or give you this ability when you get different charges. No, I have burns in the sideboard. We have 3 extra burns in the sideboard. There's 4 Crackling Bolts and 1 burn in the main, and there's 3 burns in the sideboard. So if I kill this guy, he gets 2 less resources, so he'll still have 1, 2, 6, up to 7. So I think I'm gonna play out the Ruby Shard and just attack for 3 here. Because even if I kill this, he's still gonna have a lot of resources. And then this way, if he plays something we care about, we can Counter Magic. If he doesn't play something we care about, we can play Azure Fate Sorceress during his unstep. But like he'd still have up to 7 this turn with his champion power, and like 7's the tipping point, really. And like if he just doesn't do anything that we care about here, he just like attacks us for 3. That's fine. The other thing about champions in this game is the champions have variable life total. So depending on, see, spell shield. So if we would have If we would have Crackling Bolted this, we would have gotten Root Fathered this turn. So this card is an 8/8 with Spell Shield. That means it can't be targeted by things. And when it enters play, it deals damage to his opponent equal to its power. So it does 8 to us just for hitting the battlefield, which is a lot of damage. And now all of his other Root Fathers cost 2 more resources. So if he wants to play another Root Father, it's going to cost him 9. So I'm going to go ahead and attack with Jags here. I'm going to go ahead and Crackling Bolt his guy. In addition to doing 3 damage to a troop or player, this also gives us a charge towards our champion ability here. So I'm going to go ahead and play out a shard. And this shard chooses between our 2 different thresholds, but it doesn't give us a temporary resource. So basically it comes into play tapped. Subterranean Spy. Oh, I probably should have led on this. This card is sweet. So this is an ability called Tunneling, which puts it off to the side, and it's basically like Suspend. So after a certain number of turns, it comes into play with speed, but our opponent doesn't know what card we've tunneled. And while this card is tunneled, we get to see our opponent's hand, which is sweet. So he doesn't know that we're looking at his hand right now. So he has an Arborean Root Father in his hand that costs 9 that he's not going to be able to play next turn now because we killed his guy. I could activate my champion ability here, but we'll get more damage out of it by waiting a turn because next turn we can play Azure Fate Sorceress and then activate the champion ability. He also just drew this card called Kronkosaur here. Oh, he can Root Father us, right? Because he drew a shard? Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We could just... I think we're just going to kill our opponent this turn, very likely, though. If we have a reasonable... If we have an average champion ability here, we're going to kill him. So, Azure Fate Sorceress deals 4 damage to our opponent when it comes into play. And then our average size elemental is a 4/4. So if we hit a 4/4 or bigger, he dies. We hit a 3/3. Alrighty. That's unfortunate. So, this deals double damage when it comes into play. We'll go ahead and Arcane Focus here, looking for... I'm going to take another Arcane Focus because if we find a Burn or a Crackling Bolt, he just dies. Super close game. His card here fights 2 things when it comes into play. So his guy is going to get to come into play and kill both of our guys, unfortunately. Or he just gets to kill us with that. No, that doesn't kill us, right? Yeah, this only does 8. No, yeah, it's basically, they call it the chain, but it's basically a stack. Yeah, there's the 5 shards community event is at 6 o'clock today. It starts at an hour and a half. So Kronkosaur kills 2 of our guys here. He's probably going to kill the Azure Fate Sorceress and the Rock Elemental. And then if he attacks with both of his guys, oh, he's killing those 2. Okay. That's interesting. I guess the Kronk was dying either way. And then, actually, yeah, no attacks is good. So, we're looking for a piece of reach here. So, this comes into play. And we draw a Burn or a Crackling Bolt, and he just dies. And we drew a Crackling Bolt. So, this game was really close. Our guys didn't have speed. We played the Azure Fate Sorceress that turn and generated the Rock Elemental that turn. So things can't attack the turn they come into play unless they have speed. So opponent is playing troop-based ramp. He has a lot of troops in his deck. So the burns and even the heat waves actually seem pretty good. I think I'm going to bring in the Buccaneer as well. This returns something to its owner's hand when it comes into play. The Mentalists seem kind of slow, and the Subterranean Spies don't seem fantastic. Azure Fatal Skill, yeah, you're right. We had a ton of draws there. We had our draw step plus the 2 cards from Arcane Focus to redraw 2. Maybe I don't want all of the heat waves. Maybe just like 4 burns and 4 crackling bolts and like 1 heat wave here, because heat wave does kill a lot of our own things. This does 2 damage to every troop. So yes, I think I just like this configuration. I don't think I want these other cards. Afternoon, Chris. What's going on, mate? Oh, is he bringing in... You're right, he's probably bringing in Burns, right? I guess that's fair. Like, he's bringing in Burns against us, too, so Jags gets much worse. But, I mean, like, if he's killing Jags, then he's not killing Azure Fate, and he's not killing Hypnoscientist. This card is so good. It's a 1/1 that when it attacks, it gives him a resource, so it's an aggressive mana guy, basically. Fanatico of Mark Rosewater, Van Meter wrote about stuff in his article this week, I'm fairly certain. Abby is super good. That card is really strong. Chlorophyllias, that's fine. Sin Prodder's not very good. So now I have to choose between killing this. I think we have to Crackling Bolt his resource troop here. Like, getting the Mesmeric Hypnoscientist tunneled so it comes out sooner is good. But otherwise he's going to have 3, 4, 5, up to 6 resources next turn. He's going to have a lot of shards next turn. Maybe I'm supposed to have more heat waves in. Maybe I'm supposed to have more heat waves in and less... Abby is very powerful. It's a powerful effect. I talk about blue-white control in my most recent article there. It seems like a reasonable deck. So Reese is really sweet. So again, he doesn't know that this is a Reese that's tunneled. It could be anything. This is a 4/4 that when it untunnels after 4 turns, that's... Oh, geez. So we're just dead, basically. He put speed and... So one of the things that's sweet about this game is that... So last game when we saw this card, it had Spell Shield and deal damage gems in it. You can change the gems in your cards that are socketed in between games when you're going to the reserves. So this card is no longer Spell Shield, and he's made it so it has speed. So this is going to come into play and deal 8 to us, and then it's going to get to attack for 8 because it has speed. So we're going to 13, and then he's attacking for 10. That's really gross. Yeah, I think we should definitely have Heat Waves in my deck. That card is so good. Oh, look, there's a Heat Wave. It's gonna be too little, too late. Ugh, do I want Heat Waves on the play though? I think I'm just gonna make myself a liar and just hit submit again here. Heat Wave is definitely worse on the play than the draw. Yeah, I'm just gonna submit. Hopefully we get a nice aggressive start here, like turn 2 Tunneling Troop with Azure Fate Sorceress in hand or Jags. That was rough. So if you're interested in checking out Hex, it's completely free to get into. You can check out the link there. It talks about how to get started and how to get started with Constructed. This is a fantastic hand. It's like a combination of Morph and Suspend, really. Because like there's the hidden information game that you get from Morph, but it has the similar mechanics to Suspend. Opponent doesn't have an accelerator on one, so that's good for us. So we get to go ahead and tunnel Reese this turn, and we get to play a shard that doesn't give us a temporary resource next turn and tunnel Hypnoscientist, and then we get to play Azure Fate, and hopefully kill him before he kills us, because this hand is super aggressive and can just race him hopefully. So yeah, so the The PvP third sorceress. All right. So the PvP decks in this game do cost money, just like decks in Magic. The deck that I'm playing costs about 150 USD if you were to buy all of the cards like directly for cash. You can also That article assumes you know how Magic the Gathering works, and attacking and all that kind of stuff works the same in Hex as it does in Magic. So I don't cover all of the things that would be redundant for Magic players. That article isn't an intro to Hex for everyone. Okay, about 150 USD. So this specific deck costs 150, and this is a trading card game. This is a trading card game, which means unlike Hearthstone, your cards are not tied to your account. You can buy and sell your cards, unlike the other games. So this game allows you to buy, sell, and trade cards with other players. And the competitive decks in this game start as low as there's a Ruby aggro deck that's like $30. This specific deck that I'm playing is around 150. Yep. Correct. You can build a competitive tier 1 aggro deck for that amount. And you can also farm for your stuff. Correct. So if he attacks here, I'm going to play an Azure Fate Sorcerer, and he doesn't attack because I could have Azure Fate. So because we have a bunch of these, I'm just going to play this out. He could kill us next turn. If he has double, if we get Root Dadded next turn, we really need a Burn or a Crackling Bolt here. Another Azure Fate. All right. This might end poorly for us. If he has a Root Dad, so this card, whenever he plays a card that costs, he's cycling a Root Dad. So maybe he doesn't have enough. No, he had enough resource, so we should just be dead here, I believe. So he's gonna kill us on turn 4. That's rough. This hand just didn't have any interaction in it. Rats. So this card, so he gets 2 copies of this card when he plays it because it costs more than 5, so he gets a copy. And when 1 comes into play, it deals damage equal to its power to us. So it does 8 and it has speed, and then this one does 8 and has speed. So we can't block both of them, unfortunately. So we get hit for 16, and then he ships with all the guys, and we take another 11. Oh wait, we're not just dead, right? We can play another Azure Fate and block both. If he has a burn, we're dead. Okay. So block. In response to these guys, can we kill him here? We might actually be able to kill him. Maybe I was wrong. So this does 2. So this card does 5 to him when it comes into play, and it makes his guy not. Oh yeah, he's dead, isn't he? I forgot we could flash in a second one. Oh, Azure Fate just entered play, so he can. No, wait, he can only block one of these? Oh, yeah, we got him, actually, didn't we? All right, yep. I'm glad this is a friend, because I said GG's like we were dead. And I forgot that we could play another Azure Fate and block. And then we got to play a third one out during our ready step in response to these. And so when this card comes into play, it inspires these. So these dealt damage equal to their power to our opponent. And then this card makes something not be able to block when it comes into play. So he can only block one of these guys. He's going to take at least 4 here. Whoops. Alright, sweet. We didn't lose to our aggressive draw beat his. Got it. Being on the play was good that game.
Okay, everyone. We'll let the paper mache dry overnight, and tomorrow we'll all paint our animals. I think I'm catching Rosie's cold. Ready for bed, Kai?
Alright, we're gonna play one more, and then I've been going for about 4 hours, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day. We're gonna play one more match with the Azure Cannon deck here.
He was so excited about his buddy. He didn't notice how tired Bobby was.
Wait till you see it, Mommy. I think Rosie's funny long ears.
Sweet.
I hope Rosie likes it.
Do you look at her white shirt?
So opponent's champion this time, again, every time the champion's different, it pays 3 and reverts target troop he controls. So it basically, it takes all of modifiers that are on a troop and strips them off, any bonuses or penalties. One of the things that's really interesting about this game that I still take some getting used to coming from Magic is that a lot of modifiers that cards give permanently remain on the cards. I kind of want counter magic here, but we actually don't have a second Sapphire Shard in our hand right now, so we wouldn't actually be able to play it. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the Sapphire Shard so we can guaranteed play Azure Fate Sorceress on 4.
What a wonderful blue bunny, Caillou.
It's for my sister, Rosie.
Well,
Set 4 is supposed to be releasing early April, so I imagine it's sometime in the next week.
he couldn't wait to bring his buddy home to Rosie.
I doubt I will ever stream Limited. What do you mean is shard a modifier? I'm not sure what you mean by that. When this deals damage to an opposing champion, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put a human from among them into your hand. Interesting. So there's like some kind of tribal deck. Gems can't be reverted. So I think we're going to play... So he's Diamond. So one of the things that's interesting is he's only played Sapphire Resources, but we know he's a Sapphire Diamond deck because his champion ability requires a Diamond threshold. So now we have to decide if I want to play Cerulean Mentalist or Jags first. So they're both Inspired troops. Cerulean Mentalist allows my other cards to draw cards when they deal damage, which I think is what I want to do. So if I play Cerulean Mentalist this turn, next turn I can play Azure Fate Sorceress, and it'll trigger and damage him and draw a card. So his card is flying, that's why it's kind of hovering over there, so we can't block it.
Good job, Caillou. Now you can mash these boiled potatoes.
Making dinner is hard work, Mommy.
And one of the things that's neat about this game is because you don't have to make sure both players are being honest, mechanics like this where he gets to pick a human from among the top cards of his deck, we don't get to see what human he's taking. If this was a paper TCG, he'd have to reveal the human to his opponent, basically just to show like, hey, I'm not cheating, I actually took a human.
You're welcome, honey. By the way, I think
That's a sweet Mirror Knight. I haven't seen that one before. I was reading that, I was like, oh, this sounds like Mirror Knight, and I was like, oh, it is a Mirror Knight. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and put a Sapphire Shard into play, and now I have to decide, do I want to Azure Fate Sorceress or Jags this turn? I think I want to play... So if I play Jags, he'll draw cards when he hits my opponent, and he'll let the Azure Fate Sorceress deal double damage, which sounds like a good way to close out the game.
family loved going for bike rides, and they took very good care of
Person that we're playing against, Pentachills, he's been playing the game for a long time, so I doubt that he paid $60 for it. I'm sure he's just had this since the beta. I've only been playing Hex for about 2 months, but there's a lot of people that I've become familiar with that have been playing the game for a much longer time than that. And Jags is unfortunately a unique troop, which means that we can't play the second one into play and quadruple damage up.
I think Rosie really wants to help. Isn't there something she could do?
I think normal Mirror Knights that aren't Alter Art are like $3 or something like that. Opponent could have access to counter magic in their deck. Yeah, one of the things I really like about the game compared to, like, in addition to the game mechanics being good, one of the appealing aspects to it compared to something like Hearthstone is the fact that the cards have actual value. Yeah, there's 2 combo decks in Hex right now, and we are actually playing one of them. So we're going to go ahead and Crackling Bolt his flying guy that keeps drawing him extra cards, because that's really annoying. And then we're going to put Jags into play here. And he knows this is a different Jags, because the one that he bounced costs 4 now, because when he returns it to their hand, it adds a cost. So now we have to decide, do I want to put the Elemental into play right now, or do I want to wait until I have Azure Fate Sorceress? I think I want to put the Elemental into play right now, just so it can start attacking next turn and drawing cards. That's really unfortunate. So the Elemental from our champion ability reveals the top 10 cards of our deck, and its power and toughness equal the number of shards, so we only get a 2/2. But it is a 2/2 that deals double damage, and when it deals damage to our opponent, we draw a card, because it was inspired by Jags and the Mentalist. Yeah, both the combo decks that exist right now are like the competitive combo decks. There's some cheesy non-competitive combo decks, but the competitive combo decks are like combo control decks or combo aggro decks, basically.
No thanks. And from now on, you have to knock first.
This enters play, transform target troop in a crypt into a phantom and put it into play. That card's pretty sweet. It's good like value card. It's like three cost, gives you 2 bodies. All right, and he doesn't have mana open to counter magic. So I think I'm going to... Well, I probably shouldn't have played my charge yet. I'm going to play Azure Fate Sorceress here, and she's going to get inspired by Jags and the Mentalist. So she comes into play. She deals damage equal to her power to our opponent. And she deals double damage from Jags, and then when she damages our opponent, we draw a card with the Mentalist, which is sweet. I think I'm going to ship with the Rock Elemental here. He basically has to block it. I'm going to ship with Jags too, actually, because we have another Jags in our hand. And so I'm fine with him trading with this. I guess these draw cards when he dies, but we need to push damage through at some point anyways.
It's your best sticker.
That's cute. So he gets to sacrifice and then he's going to get to make another Phantom. And he drew a card when his card died because it was inspired by the Cerulean Mirror Knight. So one of the neat things is that, oh, that's how the reverting works. Wow, that's really good. So, one of the interactions that I missed that he just did with his thing. So his one card transforms a troop from his graveyard and turns it into a phantom, which is just a 1/1 flyer. But his champion ability reverts it. So basically he just reanimates something from his discard pile with that card plus his champion ability. That's really powerful. That's sweet. So sorry, before I got distracted by what our opponent was doing, because this Jags now cost 4 because he bounced it to our hand and made it cost 1 more, it'll get inspired by this Azure Fate Sorceress when it comes into play. What does this card do? Void a Lord Adam the Powerful and create a Lord Benjamin and Lord... Voided Lord Adam, Lord Benjamin, Lord Alexander, create the Triumphant and put it into play. Oh, so it's like a combo. That's interesting. So he has to get all 3 of them and then... Interesting.
Can we do it later? I have to do something.
So we're going to go ahead and play Jags here. And then when it comes into play, it's going to do damage to our opponent because of Azure Fate Sorceress. And then we're actually going to draw 2 cards because this card's been inspired by my Cerulean Mentalist twice. So we get to draw twice, which is sweet. Give me all of the value. Another Azure Fate Sorceress is phenomenal. I'm going to go ahead and Time Ripple his 4/4 here, which means he's not going to have great blocks when we attack here. And that makes his card cost more. So he's got a ton of value, but we're generating quite a bit of value ourselves. So I'm going to ship with the Rock Elemental and the Mentalist here. It's going well, Sithos. Life's well. He draws a card when his troop dies. So he's at 11. So this Azure Fate Sorceress can get inspired by other Azure Fate Sorceresses. So if we play this with this out and this out, it's going to get inspired by this and deal double damage, and it's going to deal damage equal to its power to our opponent twice. So it'll deal 4/8 when it comes into play, and we'll draw 2 cards from the Mentalist. My opponent disconnected here. What are permanent resources exactly? So when shards come into play, instead of having to manage things like tapping lands and stuff, like it's awkward, annoying, and upkeep in Magic, your shards give you thresholds, and then you have a total resource count, and you can play any combination of cards that you meet the resource requirements for from your hand, so long as you meet the threshold requirements as well. Oh, referring to Gate Guardian. Yeah, so this card, when it enters play, you gain 1 of these. So this just gives you a threshold when it comes into play. Lord Alexander. Okay, so that gives this thing speed, sure. Eternal Caller does the transform thing again, which with his champion power, he gets to revert it, and basically, so this plus his champion power lets him reanimate anything from his discard pile. So, if we draw Crackling Bolt here, he dies. Can we kill him any other way? If we put Hypnoscientist into play, it does damage equal to its power to our opponent, and it gets doubled, so that'll put him to 1, and we can make something not be able to block, and then we can attack with all 3 of these guys and force them to chump, chump, chump. Oh, we do know he has the Last Lord in his hand, don't we? We know he has the Last Lord in his hand. Because we bounced it earlier. So I guess we need to Time Ripple this guy. So we're going to go ahead and play Azure Fate Sorceress out. And if we draw Crackling Bolt here, he dies. We draw 2 cards when this deals damage to him. When it deals damage to him, we draw a card. And deals damage to him, we draw a card. So we draw 1. We draw 2. So we didn't hit Crackling Bolt to kill him. But we can Time Ripple... We can Time Ripple this guy. And then that makes it cost 4, so we shouldn't have enough resources to... ship with all of these guys. So he draws cards when 2 of his guys die from the Cerulean Mirror Knight. Uh-oh. Are we dead? He's gonna assemble the big thing. So what does this do? Create a triumphant. When this attacks, draw 3 cards, gain 3 life, and deal 3 damage to each opposing champion and troop. Wow, we're gonna die, aren't we? Woof. Gain how much life? Gain 3 life for each card in your hand. Oh lord. Well then, we were a little bit short there. Little bit short. Ugh. All right, burns and heat waves sound great. So that's scary. I'm gonna board out Mentalist because I think we just want to try and kill him faster. And probably the spies again. Just board pretty similar to how I did against the last guy. Heatwave seems pretty reasonable against a lot of his stuff. But also gets some art, so let's just bring in more cheap removal. Yeah, right? That was kind of sweet. His one guy in the air did sit there and like trigger a bunch of times and let him look for humans. Only 1 shard, mulligan. Only 1 shard, mulligan. Sweet. Sounds reasonable. Resun 2 is pretty powerful.
Andre and I showed Rosie how to blow raspberries. See?
Children, there will be no more raspberries at the dinner table, thank you. It's not okay.
So the big idiot that he assembles into isn't Spell Shield. So you guys were telling me to use my Time Ripple ASAP. You were wrong. If I'd have saved my Time Ripple, we'd have won that game. Just for reference, Hexers in chat. I should have gone and looked up the text of the card, but if we would have Time Rippled it, it only gets his powerful effect when it attacks. So if he would have put it together, we could have Time Rippled it and then been very well off. So I'm going to burn my Heat Wave just killing his one guy because his troop here adds the line of text when this dies, draw a card. So even if he plays more guys out and we kill more things with a Heat Wave, the other ones are just going to replace themselves. And we both mulliganed pretty low this game. So one of the neat things about this game is because thresholds and resources I was talking about here, even though we just got our second Sapphire resource, we can play Counter Magic this turn because we have 3 total resources and 2 threshold.
I'm so glad you could make it.
But then we wouldn't have seen it in action. You're right. It would have been less awesome, but I would have gotten to win the game. So next turn, our Reese comes into play, and this is the first time in these sets that Reese is gonna get to do his thing. So Reese, at the end of every turn, there's a bunch of robot cards in Hex. At the end of every one of my turns, Reese picks a random robot and puts it into play. Buccaneer. Yeah, I just don't really care about that. I don't have any troops in play for him to bounce. So again, one of the things that I really like about this game is we've drawn a lot of shards this game, but because we have a champion power, drawing shards is generally not as detrimental as it could be. So this time, there's 5 shards in the top 10 cards of our deck, so we get a free 5/5. He definitely has another buck if he's playing that. I'm assuming he's just playing this because he wants to block and cantrip with it, because, again, the Mirror Knight gives his other guards the text when it dies, draw a card. So he draws a card when this dies. End of our turn, we make a robot. This is not such a good robot. It's just a 1/1. But when this enters play, we gain a charge. So we've got 1 charge here. And we're going to counter magic this because otherwise he's going to bounce our Reese. Reese is unique. So if you tunnel the other one, this one goes away. Alright, well, we'll burn his Cerulean Mirror Knight and then attack for 10 here. And look, so he makes a random robot every time. So this time he made a robot that is a 3/5 flyer. Opponent concedes because Reese is just going to eat him alive. On the draw, I'm going to trim a Jags and bring in the last Heat Wave just in case his board gets out of control. Because if he has a good start, he could easily overrun us.
Rosie, you have to stop blowing raspberries.
All right. Yeah, seems reasonable. Yeah, I've been enjoying this game a lot. So I helped Adrian Sullivan test for the last Pro Tour. And he had this on his laptop when he came down to my house to play some games, and he's like, "Hey, you should check this out." And I checked it out, and I played. It has a PvE campaign. You get 200 free cards when you sign up that are more than enough to play the campaign mode. And I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours playing the campaign mode. I was like, "Yeah, this is sweet." And I invested some money and built a constructed deck for like $70 that was moderately competitive, and won my way through a couple of gauntlets, and then decided I wanted to keep playing it. And one of the sweet things about this is, just like other esports CCGs like this, they're having large cash tournaments for this a couple times per year. So they just had their first $100,000 payout cash tournament for this game, and they're supposed to be having up to 3 a year now. They said they're making plans for. All right, look, and there's Heat Wave. So I'm definitely playing this. The question is, do I want to hold up Counter Magic or cast Heat Wave? I think I just want to cast Heat Wave this turn because this has the potential to draw a card when it hits us. So it's going to replace itself if I let it hit us once.
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Yes.
I don't really play limited in any sort of game. Okay, maybe the Heat Wave is better to save because we know he has Eternal Caller. That's definitely something that could be true. We're supposed to save it because of that. So again, Azure Fate Sorceresses have Quick, so we can counter something if he plays something threatening, or Azure Fate at the end step. So he gets to revert this, and then it starts attacking us, which is unfortunate. So he attacks with both of these. I'm not going to burn Time Ripple, even though this is going to get to draw a card, because I'd like to play Azure Fate out. Oh, this is the next card, and it gives things speed. I'm going to let this resolve, and I'm just going to Azure Fate Sorceress at the end step here. And then next turn, I'm going to Time Ripple probably this guy that lets him draw cards and then hold up Counter Magic. So this does 2 damage when it comes into play. Actually, I might Time Ripple. I'm going to Time Ripple the 3/3, actually, because I want to push damage with my Azure Fate Sorceress. So that's fine if he keeps drawing cards. I think we're just going to try and burn him out this game, essentially. So we're going to go ahead and Time Ripple this guy. And then next turn, we can Counter Magic something. We can Counter Magic something on his turn. And then on our next turn, we can play a second Azure Fate Sorceress and activate our Champion ability and deal a ton of damage to him. And like this part of it, like it searches up the other parts, so that's not irrelevant.
Rosie, you have Caillou's little red ball?
Yes, she does. It's probably in her pocket.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that this game does well, for sure. Like the phase circle in the middle, like you mentioned. So this is unfortunate. He's bouncing our Azure Fate Sorceress, which means that we can't just deal a ton of damage to him this turn. That being said, I think we're going to play out this one, which does tell him that we have 2. But I think we want to just play this out and make our Rock Elemental and start beating down. He could play both parts of his combo next turn, but I think we just have to pressure him and hope for the best. I rippled the little piece because I wanted to be able to pressure him better, but that might have been too aggressive. It's possible that we are just supposed to save the ripples for his actual Triumph Fate card.
His model to be perfect for show and tell.
I can't show off my solar system without Mars. Daddy even said so.
Like, to be fair, if he hadn't had Buccaneer plus Counter Magic this past turn, we would have gotten to play a second Azure Fate and hit him for 4 down to this, and then this would have dealt double damage. He's probably bouncing the Azure Fate Sorceress, I'd imagine. Yeah.
I know. It's probably
I think I'm tunneling this. What's the quickest way to kill him here? If I play this out, it does 2. Yeah, we're probably going to get comboed out of his deck again. He knows our last 2 cards are Azure Fate Sorceresses. I'm not attacking because when his cards die, he gains life. He draws cards, I mean. So like when this one dies, he draws a card, so I'm just going to take the hit here. And these ones fly, so we can't block those.
Any luck finding Mars?
no. My model is ruined.
Maybe something else for Mars, Caillou?
Like what? I don't have another red ball. This is all.
I know you're upset, Caillou, but blaming Rosie isn't going to help.
And it isn't going to solve the problem. What if you color a white ball red? I hadn't thought about this for a while.
All right. Well, this was the definition of a perfect draw. So if he gets his stupid card, we can time ripple it. Unless he has a Verdict of the Ancient Kings here. There it is. Does he have a counterspell? Does he have a counterspell? He's assembled the combo. So these 3 things. Ooh, doesn't want to play into the time ripple.
Caillou noticed something moving.
He knows we've learned our lesson.
He wondered what it was.
3, 4, 5. So my rock, this one draws a card when it dies too. That's unfortunate. My rock elemental is going to eat this one, and then we're going to take 6 down to 7.
All this time he had been playing Rosie. And it was Gilbert who ran off with Mars.
Wait, how do we take so much damage? Does one of these deal extra?
It was Gilbert who took it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have blamed you. Rosie, help me.
I must have missed something there.
Now that you have the ball back, Caillou, you can attach it to your model.
No, I'm a better.
So,
Have it.
Lord. Oh, the 4/4 was attacking too. Oh, it's vigilance. It's steadfast. Okay, that's what it is. I forgot that this was. Okay, that makes sense. So, I messed up here. If I wouldn't wait a minute. Wait, we can kill him, right? So now I ripple my rock elemental. Okay, yeah, this is sweet. So we ripple the rock elemental here. Yeah. Yeah, so if he doesn't have a counterspell... He has a counterspell? Really? Why didn't he go for the combo then?
It's not snack time yet, Captain. You still have time to finish your artwork.
Well, we are dead.
Emma has permission to eat extra snacks.
Yeah, what the fuck, Penta? Like,
Caillou didn't think it was very fair that Emma got to eat snacks when he didn't.
I have diabetes. What's that?
That's a good question, Captain.
okay, he drew the verdict off of the one guy I killed.
Gather around for a moment, please.
He drew it off the one guy that I killed. Okay. So, yeah, so if I wouldn't have tunneled the 5-2, we'd have won that game, because then I'd have had a 5-2 to play in my hand and play out and trigger with the Azure Fate Sorceresses. Okay, sweet. I'm going to go ahead and call it a day.